So one of the most common tropes that you hear in our society is that if you're in your 20s, you can mess up, you can do whatever you want, and if bad things happen, you shrug them off because you're young and you have time and you can recover, and it is what it is. And I'm here to tell you today that that's not actually the case. You should be relatively cautious. If you're in your 20s, you got to be trying to avoid certain things that are just flying your way. It's like you're just trying to dodge the bullets that are coming at you. It's gonna be like the Matrix for you. Now, it might not be that extreme, but what I can tell you is there are certain things that can seriously mess up your life, or at least make your life more difficult moving forward for the next 40 years until retirement. And I'm here to tell you today that I don't have all the answers, but what I do have is some pieces of wisdom that I've accumulated over my 27 years on this earth. And I'm doing pretty well for myself as a 27-year-old. And these are some of the decisions that I've made, that have tried to help me out a little bit, and things that I try to take to heart at my age of 27. And sometimes, you learn these the hard way by, not following one of these decisions or one of these rules. And other times, right, you just sort of get lucky, and it's the way the cookie crumbles, and you happen to have been following it the whole time, and it's really made your life a lot better. And so I wanted to go through here today, and again, say nobody's perfect, right? Yes, you have time to recover if you're in your 20s, but these are some things that can really, really benefit you, and you should take these to heart, because not everybody wants to, give you the magical formula. And I'm not saying there is a magic formula, but when you get, these are some of the ingredients right here to that formula that can seriously help you out. So the first decision that you should be making in your 20s, and this is no matter who you are, it doesn't matter if you're relatively rich or relatively poor. This is like a thing of scale. Right? You should take your finances seriously. No matter who you are, you should probably have some form of budget. And even if it's not a perfectly, written out formal budget, you should have some like informal mental notes in your head of like, oh, this is what I make. This is what I can spend. This is what I feel comfortable with spending. Have I budgeted for my basic needs, and then can spend money on my basic wants? And, and then hopefully I have money left over to where I can invest it and make some smart decisions, so that way I can set myself up for later on in life at retirement. So take your finances seriously. And the first thing I would start with is the budget. After the budget, you have to recognize that there's something that we like to call compound interest. Now, when you're in school, for some weird reason in the United States of America, nobody tells you about what compounded interest actually is. What does that even mean? What does investing look like? What are stocks? This is something that you're going to need to teach yourself here. Now, I'm not, an investing channel, and I'm not somebody who is, some portfolio manager or anything like that. I'm not a financial advisor, but what I can tell you here is that you should be setting a little bit money aside every single paycheck, and you should try to invest that into the market. And you shouldn't just hold on to it all because, the market's going to crash here in the next 6 months and blah, 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 blah. It's like, you don't know when the market's going to crash. You have no idea. Even the most smartest people on the entire planet have no idea when the market's going to crash. So what your best bet is actually doing, and this has been proven numerous times throughout the years through various different meta-analyses, is that you should invest just a little bit on a relatively frequent basis. So, if you get 26 paychecks a year, you should invest 26 different times in a year, and, average out that amount of money that you're going to spend. So if it's $7,000 a year you want to invest, 7,000 divided by 26, and invest that every single 2 weeks, right? And that's how you're going to invest. And, hopefully over time, you're going to gain, let's say 10% every single year in the stock market. Every 7 years, your money is going to double itself. The money that you put in is going to double. And maybe in the future, when it's time for retirement, you have millions of dollars left over because you started as young as possible. You don't want to be that guy who's waiting until, I'm going to wait till I make $150K a year, and then I'm going to start investing because it's just going to be way easier for me to invest, yada, yada, yada. It's like, no. You want to start now. You want to start with these habits as soon as possible, because, a dollar today for somebody like me who's 27 years old is worth a lot more money than somebody who is, 59 years old. And even if they make more money than me, when they put that money into the market, it doesn't have nearly as long to compound and gain that extra wealth as it does for somebody like me who's, decades away from retirement. And so for me, that money is going to grow a lot more. And that's something that you have to recognize. And it becomes kind of weird at a certain point, right? Because you're going to be a person who is going to be constantly thinking about, oh, well, if I invested this money, like I would have made more than if I did X, Y, or Z, right? It's like vacation, right? Like if I spend $2,000 on a vacation, in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh my God, that $2,000 is like I don't know, $60,000, 35 years from now. And so I'm like, well, that's not something that I really want to be spending. And you're going to start to think like that, but that's kind of a good thing. And I'm not saying that you should avoid doing fun things. You should avoid having some experiences. And you should avoid having some cool stuff, because you certainly should have that. But in the same breath, you have to be making sure that you're budgeting enough money to save for that retirement, so that way your money can compound. And nobody likes to tell you that. Now, there's a few different ways you can do that. You have your employer-sponsored accounts, where they're going to take some money from your paycheck and put it right into the accounts, and obviously you can allocate it from there yourself. Or you can do it in like a individual retirement account, an IRA. I always like Roth accounts for people who are young, because like, are the tax rates going to go up when all the boomers die? Most likely, and so you probably want to have a Roth account. And then, you have your standard brokerage account. But you have to know what all these things mean, do the research yourself, and just at least start that process. Even if it's $20, a month, you got to at least start doing something. Now, with that said, another thing in finances that a lot of people tend to overlook is things like credit cards. Even, you should probably be very leery about getting credit cards, and spending a lot of money on them and not paying that off. Because let's say that you want to, I don't know, buy something for $1. It's like, but then you don't, pay that off this year for some reason. Now all of a sudden you're going to be paying $1.30, a year from now for that same thing that cost you $1. Like, that's not, like, you don't want to do that. And think about it in scale, right? If it's $1,000, now it's going to be $1,300, right? For the exact same product, all because you didn't pay it off on time. But you need that credit, so that way you can, get good loans for things like houses and whatnot. And so, be very cautious with things with your finances, because that's like a surefire way to just ruin your life almost instantly, is not taking this stuff seriously. And maybe it doesn't bite you until, 20 years from now, but it will bite you at some point if you don't take your finances seriously. The next piece of advice I have for people is do not gamble, smoke, or drink, and then don't have a kid until you're ready. Now, again, I'm not saying that there's obviously not exceptions to the rules. So it's like, yeah, dude, you want to go to a wedding, you want to have some alcohol for a day, you want to maybe go out with friends every once in a while. Feel free, bro. Like, nobody's holding you back here. But what I am saying here is that these are decisions that if you start to do this constantly, over and over and over again, for many years in a row, not many years in a row, you do this many days in a row, and eventually it starts to become a little bit of a habit. Eventually, you might become addicted to one of these things, whether that's gambling, whether that's smoking, whether that's drinking. You're going to have, like, your life could be ruined pretty quickly here. If you become like a gambling addict, for example, it's like your money can go away almost instantly in 2 seconds, right? Especially if you get to the very degenerate types of gambling that you see online nowadays with many different platforms like Kalshi or Polymarket. And like, shout out to them. I'm happy that they're around, but because people, I think it's a freedom thing. But in the same breath, you want to try to stay away from those unless you just know, hey, look, like, this $100 that I'm going to be gambling this is purely for fun. It's purely for entertainment, and it's already lost. I don't even have it. It's not even mine anymore. I literally gave it up to the company. If I so happen to have gotten lucky and made some money, that's great. But it's already gone. And then say for smoking, like, why would you want to be addicted to a substance where you just have to constantly, just put it in your mouth and suck on these Chinese chemicals, for the next 30 years? Why would you want to do that? Especially with all like the health problems that come with that. It just doesn't, to me, I don't know. I don't see the appeal in it. I never have. A lot of people love it, and like, hey, fair game, man. It's a free country. But what I am telling you here is that that's a lot of money, and that's a lot of health problems that you're going to have down the line. It's just going to make you feel terrible, and you don't want to be doing stuff like that. And drinking's, again, in that same category. Again, a drink every now and then is probably not going to kill you. But, once you start doing it, every day for, say, 3 weeks, and next thing you know, that 3 weeks turns into 4 weeks, and that 4 weeks turns into 5, and before you know it, you're a few months in, you've been drinking almost every other day, and now you're kind of addicted to it, right? And you feel like you need that to sort of persist in life, and that's not a position where you want to find yourself in. You can make very stupid decisions very quickly. And like when you're drinking, for example, like maybe if you go out there and drive, you get a DUI on your record, it's like, you're cooked, man. It's like that, you're cooked, you're so cooked. And jobs are going to flag you, and you're just going to be a lot harder for you to find employment in a job market whereby you're already struggling. Because this is not what it was like, 40 years ago when the boomers were kicking it around, paying $4 for houses. Like, you live in a different world, and you can't afford to make some of these mistakes. And then also, too, having a kid until you're ready. I see some people, man, and it's like, you have a kid when you're like 15 or 16 or, 19 even. You just weren't ready for it. And it's not to say like, hey, look, man, obviously, like, nobody loves, the idea of like starting families more than I do. But in the same breath, like, you want to wait until you're ready, because that can really destroy your life very, very quickly. And I know it's like a blessing, but it's like a blessed curse in some regards, because it's like, yes, you have a baby. It's like, but also too, are you going to be able to provide for them? Are you going to be able to give them a good life? Are you going to be able to raise them appropriately? It's like, dude, if you're making, $12 an hour, and you can barely put a roof over your head. Now you have to take care of a whole other human being. It's like, you know what? You probably should have waited another year or two until you were a little bit more financially stable. And I'm not saying that poor people can't have kids. I'm not saying that at all. But I would say at least have, some semblance of being ready for this. Don't just like take it as like, oh, what a surprise. Like, I need to have this baby now, when I'm completely not ready for it, and just upend every other aspect of my life. And so, while I understand both sides of the argument here, just something to take into consideration there, that you want to try to at least be a little bit more ready than not. Next up here, the next piece of advice I have for you guys is, do not overvalue school and degrees. So one of the things that I did, and again, things kind of worked out for me pretty well, but you don't want to overvalue school and degrees like the popular sentiment is in this country. Everybody says that if you go to school, you get good grades, you're going to end up getting a good job with good pay, and that's just simply not how it works at all. Not even a little bit. In fact, you're actually more likely to be unemployed the more education you get in the United States. And you think, really, is that actually the case? And the answer is yes. This has been multiply documented in the past couple years now. And nobody wants to believe me when I tell them this, but it is most likely a mistake for you to go to university and college. You can say, okay, but like, aren't all the rich people going to university and college? It's like, yes, but for them, they have networks and they can hook people up with jobs. And, like, if you're the daughter of like Kim Kardashian, for example, it's like, dude, no matter what you do, you're going to be rich. It's just, money's going to come to you. It's going to flock to you. But if you're just an average person, lower upper class, upper middle class, lower middle class, upper lower class, middle lower class, lower class, you probably really want to be considering here that it's not a good idea to go to university. Again, you're more likely to be unemployed. And that's not even the main issue here. The main issue is that the degrees are so bloody expensive now that it causes you to accumulate a crazy amount of debt to where you're just going to suffocate. You can't breathe from it. And then you're still not even going to be able to find a job. And if you do find a job, it's most likely not going to be in your field doing exactly what you wanted to do. You were better off doing something else instead, because there's extreme opportunity costs that are associated with going to school. For me, I got my doctorate in curriculum and instruction, and I have every license under the sun in my profession. I have all the degrees. I have the brand names. I've done every possible thing academically, and I have a better resume than literally anyone in my profession where I live, and yet it's irrelevant. Nobody cares, not even a little bit, right? You go in, first of all, you can't even get interviews, but if you were to get an interview for something that you wanted, let's say the next position for me would be like a principal, like an assistant principal, and you'd say, okay, well, can I get one of those roles? And the answer is, do you know somebody? So, okay, cool, you know somebody. Do you know them better than anybody? And are they willing to vouch for you and literally hook you up with a job, basically? And if the answer is no, well, then, your degrees are pretty much useless there. Because all the degrees are is saying that, look, for that 10% for that, let's say 20% of jobs that you're actually competing for, because 80% of them are filled through some form of nepotism, will these credentials outmatch the other people? And is it enough for people to overcome their biases, right? Are you too young? Right? If you're too young, they're not going to hire you. Doesn't matter if you have the best resume on the planet. Nobody cares. Again, nobody cares. They want to, if you look like you're 45, you got a lot better chance than if you look like you're 25. Do you have the right political leanings? Right? If you don't get along with that person politically, they're probably not going to want you. Do you have the right personality for things? Do you guys have good rapport back and forth with each other? That's what helps people get things like positions. It's not necessarily the school, the degrees, the GPA, all the extracurriculars that you did. It's all a lie. It's not real. In the real world, nobody cares. And you hear people saying this sometimes when they're a little bit older. It's like, oh, like, I don't remember my GPA. And it's like, for me, as like one of those academic nerds, I'm like, oh yeah, like I cared about my GPA a lot, and I do think the GPA should matter a little bit. But people are like, yeah, dude, I don't have a clue. And what they're saying is, even if they don't understand, what the job market's actually like, what they're essentially saying is that it doesn't matter. Nobody cares. And you have to recognize that as a student, because you think that the world is all sunshines and rainbows, when in reality it's not. It's a very dark and depressing place. And if you're not on top of your game in every other aspect, on top of things like schools and degrees, you're not going to really stand a chance. And so, the school and degrees can maybe help you, but it's certainly not the end all be all. And maybe it opens up a couple more doors for you. But it's not to say that that's something that you should really only be striving towards. It's not like I want to graduate, I want to immediately go to university. It's okay. Well, let's say that that's the case. Let's say you work part time. We're not even going to count the income from that. But you're going to school full time. Let's say, I don't know, you went into sales or something. I'm like a very sales oriented person. I could sell almost anything, I feel like. And I was a corporate recruiter for like 4 years. I'm pretty freaking good at selling things to people. And you could say, okay, well, what would I have made? Let's say, I don't know, starting off $50,000 a year for two years, right? That's $100,000 in opportunity cost for 2 years. After that, you've learned the ropes, you know the company, you know the product. Let's say you're going to push up to $100,000. Again, not unrealistic here if you actually know what you're doing and you actually have a skill in this capacity. Now you're at opportunity cost of $200,000, right? And then in addition to that, if you went to graduate school, for instance, there's even more money, right? You have the cost of tuition plus the cost of undergraduate tuition too. God, we didn't even think about that. Let's be nice. Add 50,000, so you're not 250,000. Graduate school, let's say 50,000. That's $300,000. Plus, again, time in graduate school, unless you're already working full time. Before you know it, you could be up to $500,000 in opportunity cost that you already sunk in. $500,000 is a lot of money. Now, after taxes, a few $100,000, you could invest in that in the S&P 500. You wait 14 years, and before you know it, you have almost $1 million that you could have had otherwise. And again, everybody's situation is different. Sometimes you got to live off that money. Sometimes you can't live at home. But what I am saying here is that you have to recognize that there's huge opportunity costs with this, because you could retire off of $900,000, but you're not going to retire off of $0 when you're just starting off with like something like a doctorate, for instance. Right? It can be very stupid to do a lot of schooling unless you have a very solid plan in place and you get pretty freaking lucky and you're really taking things serious. So that's number 3. The fourth thing I wanted to mention here was that you want to network and you don't want to neglect the humble opportunities that present themselves. Sometimes networking is, oftentimes looked down upon. They're like, oh, I'm going to be networking. And like, that's true. Like, oh, like, I'm going to be networking. I'm going to make all these relationships with people. Blah, blah, blah. Like, dude, nobody cares about you, bro. So like networking doesn't really exist in the way that you think it exists. It's not like you just go to university and like you just meet every single person. Like that person's gonna be willing to, lay their life on the line for you, lay their career on the line because, they want to recommend you as a candidate when they don't really know much about you. It's about actually making and establishing contact and relationships with people over very long periods of time and staying in contact with them no matter where you go and trying to get that, sometimes quid pro quo a little bit, but also, just recognize that, hey, look, like I got your back. If you ever need a job, I'll put in a good word for you, but I need you to put in a good word for me. So it's quid pro quo a little bit, but that's just the way that it works. And 80% of jobs, when you look at the numbers, are filled through some form of nepotism. So if you're a young person here and you think that you're just going to get it out of your own merits, like you're just completely in la la land. Like you have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. 80% of roles filled through some form of networking. And that could be something as simple as, some form of nepotism. That could be something simple as, a recommendation from someone, or it could be something as severe as saying, hey, look, we feel pretty strongly about this candidate here. I think we got to hire them. And that person gets hired directly because of that. So, there's that, right? But it also goes to say, don't neglect the humble opportunities that present themselves. If there's an opportunity to make yourself closer to other people who could potentially help you out in the future, you should do it. And I'm not saying that that's, again, like a purely selfish endeavor here, but it is something to take into consideration. This is a very different world than the world that your parents grew up in. And it's not something that you can just sort of scoff at and say, all right, well, like, I don't really need to do this because this is probably not going to help me. It's like, you're right. It probably won't help you, but it could. And you need every advantage that you can get. So network, and then don't neglect those humble opportunities. And that goes for all sorts of things, whether that's, trying to get a new credential somewhere, a new certification, or maybe you want to, pick up someone from work or whatever it may be. Don't neglect them. Don't don't scoff at them too much, and until you feel very secure in that, like, hey, I probably don't need to be doing this stuff anymore. I can relax a little bit, turn off the burners and sort of let stuff sizzle. So with that said, what's number 5 here? Next up, you want to become very proficient with artificial intelligences. And the reason I put this one down is because we live in a new age whereby something like Google is actually a little bit slower than researching using AI. And AI is right the majority of the time. Everybody will say, oh, AI is wrong all the time. No, it's not. You don't know what you're talking about. AI is right most of the time. Now, sometimes it can be a little bit annoying because if you try to ask something relatively political, it'll sort of shun you down, or something controversial, it'll give you like very PR oriented answers. But if you have half a brain, you can recognize that that you need to sort of go to Google yourself and try to look up some stuff. Then you'll be good. But for a lot of things that you want to learn, you can just sort of ask the AI to summarize stuff for you, and it's very good at that. It'll pull from 40 different sources and then tell you what it is that you need to know. So now you can learn way more efficiently. If you want to crunch data, it can do that. For most people's data sets, AI is going to be absolutely killing it for you. You don't really need to have anything more complex. You don't really need to have anything more complex than a lot of what you see in like your basic Excel functions, but the AI can do that for you. And so, you should probably become relatively proficient in it. Obviously there's a case to be made that, hey, look, you want to be doing stuff yourself the old hard manual way, but it's like, that's like, to me, it's like saying, all right, well, I want to still ride a horse around because I'm very attached to horses. I don't want to have a car. It's like, well, eventually you're gonna have to get with the times, man. And obviously there's lots of critiques with AI and saying, oh, well, AI is the end of the world and this and that, and we should be taking it very, very cautiously. And it's like, yeah, maybe there's an argument there for sure. But what do you want, like everybody else to be ahead of you and you get left in the dirt? I don't know. I mean, just take AI a little bit more seriously. And you can do that by just, toying around with it a little bit, just understanding how it works. Or you can learn how to do it a little bit more in depth and how it can actually help you with your job and automate some things away and make your life a little bit easier. It really depends. But these are some things that's just something you should take into consideration. So moving on here. Again, losing my voice a little bit. The next one that I have is that you lose energy the older you get. So you want to sacrifice now as opposed to later. One of the things that I wish people told me, and they mention it a little bit. They always say that, oh, when you get my age, like you're not gonna want to do this. Or you become my age, you're not gonna want to do that. Or when 10 years from now, when you this or that, blah 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 blah. What they're essentially saying here is that you lose energy the older you get. Like I had way more energy when I was 18 than I do now at 27. I just do. I don't know how to explain it. I don't know why it happens that way. The only time I even feel remotely the same as I did, 10 years ago in terms of my energy is when, and this gets to our next one here, I take care of my health. If I start eating right, good foods, I avoid sugar, I avoid the sweeteners in any capacity, any way, shape, or form. You avoid the fried foods. You work out consistently. It doesn't have to be for a long time. I believe it's if you work out for 5 minutes, you get a 40% reduction in Alzheimer's and dementia. If you work out for 10 minutes a day, it's a 60% reduction. And then for every half an hour per week that you add on to that routine, in addition to that 10 minutes, then it's just a reduction of like, I think 4%. Of chances of getting like Alzheimer's, dementia. So 10 minutes a day is really all that you need. And so let's just bump it up to 20 and say, all right, you can work out for 20 minutes a day. Yeah, you probably can. And don't say you don't have enough time. Everybody always has time for everything. The question is, do you have energy for it? But working out is what gives you more energy in the first place. So eating healthy, working out, getting sleep and trying to stay relatively consistent in it. That's one thing that I struggle with myself. I'm very bad at sleep. But if you can try to stay consistent, try to get your 8 hours of sleep in every day, maybe even more, that's going to really help you in the long term. You're going to feel so much better. And that energy that you lost over those 10 years is now going to start to come back. And then, in addition to that, you want to be recognizing that because this energy sort of fades away, and like, yes, you can stave it off by trying to stay healthy. You want to make those sacrifices in the now, right? If you're going to go to university, you better do it now. If you're going to get those higher degrees, you better do it now. If you're going to spend longer hours at work, you better do it now. If you're going to want to miss certain events and functions, so that way you can focus on building up your career and in your status, you better do it now. Because I'll tell you what, like the older you get, like I can't even imagine what it's like to be like 45. I mean, you'll probably just feel dead inside every day. It's like, so you can really sympathize with the people who are definitely a lot older. And I don't know, maybe that's just me. I take pretty good care of my health, but I do recognize that I don't have the energy that I did 10 years ago. And I really, really wish that I did, but I just don't. And I can only see it going downhill from here. And that's one of the things that nobody tells you. And I think this is something that a lot of people probably experience, but it gets overshadowed. And so that's one of the pieces of advice I always like to give people. Whenever they ask me, like, what's one thing I can do? It's just take care of your health, man. Everybody has a million problems, but then as soon as you get a health problem, all of a sudden you only have one problem. Right, and that's your health. So take care of it, right? Because it's very difficult to get back. Pretty easy to lose, very hard to get back. So keep that in mind. Next up here, it says take advantage of your get out of jail free card for being young. So when you're like a naive little 19-year-old or naive little 21-year-old or naive little 23-year-old, 25-year-old, whatever, people are willing to give you chances. And if you mess up, it's not the end of the world, right? People are gonna be like, oh, well, they're just young, blah, 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 blah. But now you start to become, now you're in your 30s. People are gonna start to look at you. They're gonna be like, yeah, like you should probably know how to do this by now. You're getting a little bit old. And if you're in your 40s or 50s or God forbid 60s, and you're trying to, and you're making some of these same mistakes that a lot of these young people are making, why are they gonna take a chance on you? And people are, they'll take a chance on a young person. And say the idea that's like, look, I can maybe train them up to be to where I want them to be. But if you're already in that same boat as the 20-year-old, but you're 45, they're going to look at you and be like, yeah, you should have had your act together a long time before this. I mean, we're not going to take the chance on you. So, you take advantage of like your youth card a little bit. Recognize that, this is like a time for learning and growth and trying to get some of these unique experiences to be a better person. But it's one of those things whereby that fades away over time. I'm fortunately, I look pretty young still, and I'm still in that category of using the get out of jail free card sometimes. But I just know that it's going to start to fade away at a certain point. Right? People are going to look at you and they'll be like, wait, you know what? You should have had your act together, man. It's like, you're not just a little kid anymore. You got to get it together. And so, take that, as much as you can in the sense of training, right? If you're going to be going to a new job, learn everything you can, and really be humble about it. And don't scoff at the humble opportunities that present themselves. Don't do it. It's going to be bad for you. Next up here, we're going to have number 9, and that's don't take on too much debt. So that kind of ties in with take your finances seriously, number 1. But I wanted to make this one its own point because debt is something that it can be extremely dangerous to a lot of people, whether that's credit card debt, mortgage debt, taking on a new car. I mean, I know so many people, it's like they go out and they go buy some brand new Mercedes and it's like $60,000 and you're like, Jesus Christ, like that looks sweet, dude. And you're trying to impress people, with stuff that, maybe you don't even necessarily really want, but you just like the name brand on it, to impress people that you don't even really care about. And it's just like, what are you doing, man? It's like you would have been better off just saving that money, buying a $20,000 car or a $25,000 car that's just as good in every way, shape, or form, every bell and whistle, just doesn't have the fancy logo on it. And then you could have invested the rest and set up your future. So that way, in 30 years from now, you don't have to be working what everybody else does. And so a lot of people go into crippling debt. It's like the Ford F-150 epidemic, right? People are buying $100,000 cars, and you're just like, what are you doing, bro? You don't even need that. You're driving an $80,000 Ford F-150 to go to work in your office job. It's like, what are you doing? I don't understand that. It's like, yeah, it's freaking sweet, and yeah, it looks cool, but it's not cool for the price of a mortgage payment. It's not. It's just not. You're better off taking that money, investing it elsewhere, and debt can really destroy you, right? Eventually, once you get so much debt, it becomes impossible to sort of crawl out from under that. And it can really bog down everything else that you do in your life, especially when there's interest rates associated with that. Because like borrowing the money is not free. It's not like if you borrow $100,000, you pay back $100,000. It's like, no, that's not how it works at all. You might pay back $150,000, $200,000, $250,000. It really just depends on the interest rate and the term of the loan. But these things can add up, and they add up very, very quickly. It can ruin people's lives. You've ever heard the term being house poor, for example? If you buy too expensive of a house, it's like then your lifestyle just goes down the drain because you can't afford anything else. You can only afford your house. And so, that advice extends everywhere in terms of debt. But it's especially true when you're younger because, again, that's money that you could be using now to invest into your future and have that compound throughout the next, 20, 30, 40 years, however long you want to work or need to work. And then last up, number 10, I put down monitor your social media usage more as well as your social circle. I wanted to lump them two together. Be mindful of like your social sphere, I guess I should say. Social media is a very damning thing. For me, I know it's destroyed my attention span, and I'm somebody who's been relatively blessed with a pretty good one, right? I remember I used to be able to sit down for hours and just read things like books and whatnot. And books is kind of like a higher form of entertainment almost, right? It's not necessarily like it's you necessarily need to read books. I'm not one of those people who thinks that you need to read books to understand the world or become wise. But what I am going to say is like, it's probably a little bit easier to read a bunch of books and become wise than it is to watch social media and become wise. Or maybe watch things like videos and whatnot sometimes. And so, being mindful of your social media use, just trying to stay off of it a little bit more. TikTok will destroy your brain, man. It's brain rot. It's called brain rot for a reason, right? Your brain rots away, and and that's not a good thing. And you can feel it the longer you spend on a lot of these social platforms. I mean, they're specifically engineered to keep you addicted and wanting to come back. So that's why a lot of people, the first thing they do in the morning is they wake up and they start scrolling social media, and it's like man, like that's so bad. But there's no way to help yourself. And you think it's relatively harmless, and maybe it is relatively harmless to an extent. It's like, but now you're sacrificing so much of your time. And maybe you would have spent that watching TV 20 years ago. But regardless, you're spending that time that you could have been doing things that are a little bit more productive, like building a skill. Again, making that sacrifice, like rule number 6 says, now, so that way in the future it can help you out. And obviously enjoy your leisure, of course. Like I have lots of leisurely activities. Playing video games with people. I like working out. There's all sorts of different things I like to do that are not necessarily building a skill per se. But what it is to say, just be a little bit more mindful of it. Do you need to spend 3.1 hours a day on TikTok? Probably not. Would you probably be just as happy as if you spent 30 minutes a day on TikTok? And the answer is yes. Like you most likely would be a little bit happier. So just be a little bit more mindful of that. And then as well as your social circle, like you probably just want to cut negative people out of your life. If somebody's being a very they're a very negative person, where every time you're around them, you just feel annoyed, you feel upset, you dislike them. They're always criticizing you unjustly, or just trying to make you upset. They're rage baiting you. Just get them out of your life, man. You don't need that. And it becomes easier to cut people off the less long you've known them. So it becomes a lot easier to cut somebody off that you've known for 1 year than it is to cut somebody off that you've known for 10 years. And that's true with relationships as well. If you're in a bad relationship, for instance, right? So don't just stay because you feel like you have no other options. It's like, just end it now. Cut your losses. Say, hey, look, I learned from this experience. It is what it is. I wish you the best in with your life. But unfortunately, this time I think I'm just going to distance myself a little bit, or let things just die down naturally, because it's not something that you want to just carry on. It's like a weight on your shoulders. It's like once you've curated your circle to where you're around people that you feel very comfortable with, life becomes a lot easier for you than it would otherwise be. And again, nobody tells you this as like one of their big pieces of life advice, but it's something that's so true. It's like you just don't want to talk to those people, man. So you want to be around people who make you happy and build you up as a person. And again, whoever that is, whether that's a relationship with somebody romantically or whether that's something platonic with a friend, doesn't matter what it is, you just want to cut them out. Now, with that said, guys, of course, there's other decisions that you can make in your 20s, but these are top 10 that I have here. And again, it's a little bit of a longer video, but if you think about it, we only spent 3 minutes talking about each rule pretty much. And so, these are 10 decisions, just a little bit of advice that I have, and we just went one by one. Again, take your finances seriously. Don't gamble, smoke, or drink, or have a kid until you're ready. Do not overvalue school and degrees. Network and don't neglect the humble opportunities that present themselves. Become proficient with artificial intelligences, and we'll say new technologies too. Don't lose energy. You're going to lose energy the older you get. Sacrifice now. Take care of your health. Take advantage of your get out of jail free card for being young. Don't take on too much debt, and monitor your social media usage more, as well as your social circle. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Take it to heart. Again, sometimes you can break some of these rules, and nobody's perfect, and you're going to break these rules. I break these rules, but if you can generally follow these the vast majority of the time, you're going to be good to go. I mean, think about it this way. It's like, these things like usually takes a long time for your life to get ruined by not following some of these decisions here. But sometimes it can just take one night, right? You go drink and drive, you get DUI, man, it could really ruin you. You could end up killing someone on the road. Or you weren't taking care of your health, and then one night, it's like maybe you compounded from bad not taking care of yourself for 20 years, but maybe one night you have a heart attack, right? And so, again, be mindful of these rules. Sometimes they're meant to be broken. You want to enjoy life. Enjoying life is something that you really want to do too. I mean, for me, not enjoying life was sort of a staple of things for me. I lived a very Spartanistic lifestyle for 4 years getting my doctorate. And then when I was done, I was like, geez, I probably could have just tried to enjoy life a little bit more. But there's sacrifices to be made. And if you're going to do it, you probably want to do it now because you're going to be losing that energy. So, there's pluses and minuses to it. And you want to make sure you got a little bit of a balance. But, take these, decisions here and try to model your life after it, and I guarantee you'll see some better results than what you were currently if you're not following them. So with that said, guys, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, or maybe advice for the next generation, put them down below in the comments, and I'd love to hear your guys' perspective on this or any advice that you guys have. So with that said, my name is Dr. Ian Phillips. Thank you so much for watching. Hit subscribe, and we'll talk to you later. Peace.